Hello everybody, welcome back to Dominions 5. We are in the middle of our game plan series for Tien. This was the game BumbleRumble. In the past few episodes, well, we've done a nation overview, and then we talked about the early game. And we talked about how our build could be used for expansion, and also how we would deal with, and also how we could deal with a potential early rush from one of our neighbors, whether it be with some kind of meme bless or perhaps with some kind of awake expander or something like that. So what I've decided to do for this episode and the next one as well is I actually have most of the turns saved for this game. I was using two different computers, so some of them are missing. I mean, they're on the other computer, but I don't have them right now. So I loaded up a few turns at random just to see if there was anything interesting, and I think it's worth it to look at what was going on. And I'll give you also a very brief sort of play-by-play in terms of the diplomacy and how that panned out. This is turn 15. I guess the first thing I want to show you guys is the research. So I just spent a while at the end of the last episode talking about what would be our early research priorities. In this game, actually, I don't have the graphs really to show you, but I actually started research really slow. And that's because I invested a lot in infrastructure early on, and not a lot all right, how should I say this? So let's look at the map, all right? We actually have some pretty good provinces around here, some pretty nice high gold income provinces. This is a super province, right? It's one of those high yield prairie provinces, and this one is too. Diplomatically, I was able to negotiate borders with very early, so we did not have to fight over these provinces. I got this one, he got that one. And importantly, I was able to basically have peace with all of my neighbors early on. So there was no immediate threat of war, and borders were agreed upon diplomatically. With, if I remember correctly, with Shinuyama. So here we had this. He did, but it also affected me. This sort of Amazon with these death Amazons and blood Amazons. They have this event that spawns, and they just have these massive armies all over. This terrorized kind of both of us on the border here for quite a while. In the end, we were able to get it under control. I ended up buying from him this province. This province has crystal Amazons, and so I ended up getting it from him. At this point in the game, I think that's pretty much it just for the diplomacy. It's just enough to know that I basically negotiated borders and had peace with my neighbors. So I wasn't in a desperate rush to get, key tech going to protect myself. That being said, you can see that I've pretty much followed like what I was saying. I've got Thaumaturgy 1 and I'm working up Conjuration 3. Now, this is... But my total research output so far has been really low, and that's because I've been expanding with Sacreds, and what have I been doing with my mage turns? So I've been recruiting a lot of these folks, which I only do in the first year, because these guys can actually just lead an expansion party and bless an expansion party with Sacred Cav and bless them. They're also really good to build your infrastructure because they can build both the lab and a temple. So most of these guys have not been researching at all game. They've just been going around building labs and temples. You can see here I've got a fort with a lab and temple. Here there's another one out already. Here we've got already the lab built, the temple is about to be built, and we're working on a palisades. And this is only turn 15. So we've been doing a lot of infrastructure work. Similarly, now once I got my second fort going, like what have I been recruiting in my capital? I've been recruiting the Imperial Alchemists. This is what I typically do in the second year, and I send these guys site searching right away. So I don't know if I actually have one out yet. Yeah, I've got one out. So I'm recruiting these mages, but they're not researching at all. They're just out and site searching. I also, this is a good question. Oh, I'm making a prophet. So I must have either killed my prophet intentionally or he just died. But I am prophetizing, and in fact, Special Sauce is still alive and on turn 136, by the way. So go me. I've kept him around all this time. I've prophetized one of my cat mages, and that's because he's astral and he has a bit of air too, so I can teleport him around and I can cloud trapeze him around. And he can take a communion without any gear, and once he's in a communion, he can do the even higher holy spells like fanaticism and divine channeling. So that's just a little aside here. But anyways, getting back to sort of how, what I talked about in terms of our early game, in the end, we did not have to worry about dealing with an early game rush. We did have to expand, and that went quite all right. And I guess here, this is a bit over the top, but this was the battle I guess I was fighting against the Crystal Amazons. But it's Crystal Amazons plus a bunch of these from the event here. Although there are no nightmares, but we do have these Onyx Sorceresses. They don't seem to have any spells. I don't know, that's weird. These do. Huh. That's weird. Anyways, so we've got a little squad here. They've got a little Master of the Way here to bless them. And this squad also have a little Master of the Way to bless them. These are a bunch of mercenary crossbowmen that I still had. So they're in the front to hopefully get arrows and whatever. And these guys are going to attack rear. And yeah. So just with their blessing, already we're at 21 defense skill. And so we're pretty badass. And then once they get like Blood Surge here. Yeah. So this is what my secrets look like. 22 defense, 19 attack with a lance charge, and then just a regular attack that does 23 damage, plus a hoof that does 13. We've got a bit of poison resistance. We've got a bit of shock resistance. We move really, really fast. We have reinvigoration. Is that from a throne? Oh, the reinvigoration is part of the Blood Surge. It's like, where's that from? Yeah, so these are sacreds. They're pretty killy. They're great for killing indies, and obviously we make short work of that. Okay, and I guess while I'm here, I can give you a small we can do a bit of story time. So like I said, I negotiated borders with Ulm. Actually, story time, there's not much that's happened yet. There's only turn 15. Well, no, actually, there is stuff going on to the south. So we have Bandar Log over here. To his southeast is Falegra, and to Falegra's west and to Bandar Log's southwest is Pythium. Pythium is somewhere here, I forget. And what happened is Falegra kind of rushed Bandar Log pretty early, so that's why I was not at all worried about the Bandar Log down here. Falegra has a Great Mother kind of Titan chassis, which is always hilarious. But generally, Bandar Log has been totally unable to deal with Falegra's giants. That is until Pythium decided to come and attack Falegra, to take advantage of Falegra, going up in here. And so I have, at this point, basically made the decision that I'm going to come and try to take over Bandar Log before Falegra does. Or I'm going to fight Falegra. So at this point, what I'm assuming was going to happen is I assumed Falegra was going to conquer Bandar Log. And honestly, I kind of thought that his pretender was going to crush Pythium, and that I would end up having a war against Falegra. So that is my mindset basically for the second part of the early game, is we're going to go fight some giants. Now, how are we going to fight giants? Well, in specifically the Falegran giants, so why don't we take a look at what they have. Let's go to Pretenders, Falegra. Okay, so he's using a bunch of these Giganti warriors. They are berserkers. They have decent protection, no hats. a really long spear that does a ton of damage, and a bit of fire and poison resistance. And they have a ton of hit points. So overall, quite a formidable chassis. Now, they don't have particularly high attack or defense. So even though their weapon might kill me in one shot, my cavalry, when blessed, has like 20 defense. So these guys are unlikely to actually ever hit anything. That being said, we do have to kill them all because they are berserkers, and that's a huge pile of hit points with a lot of protection. He also appears to have some archers in here and just more chaff with them. And he has, like I said, he's got the a Great Mother Pretender chassis. If you guys don't know, it's a Nature Earth chassis with an enormous amount of hit points and regeneration built in, and you might get a regeneration bless with it. So it just like can have huge protection and insane regeneration. It can be really hard in the early game to kill it. Not to mention, Falegra actually has click here. Falegra actually has these Elder Cyclopses, which are pretty good chassis for thugging, right? Because these paths are pretty good, earth, air, and they can get some other randoms. And they're size 5 with decent hit points. They're giants. So you can thug these guys out quite well. And so that can be pretty hard to deal with. It certainly seems to be a problem for Bandar Log. So how are we going to beat this kind of giant army? Well, I'm going to rely on, I've got a ton of sacreds. I'm not going to stop recruiting them. We're going to keep recruiting sacreds. And we're recruiting crossbows. That is our sort of auxiliary force that we're going to use to accompany our front line of cavalry. Because crossbows can actually, deal decent damage. The name of the game here is going to be damage. At this scale of battles, I have enough sacreds to basically do a full front line. Like, recruiting more chaffy humans, they're not going to get any surface attack area on the giants. Or if he was bringing a thug, I would just want my sacreds to be there, because anything else that's there is not going to do anything, right? I want my best units to be up there fighting. So that is kind of the plan. In terms of tech, I have decided to go into evocation, to get into evocation 5, because if I do end up fighting giants, and especially giants that might be thugs that might have super high protection, I want to be doing Gifts from Heaven. Gifts from Heaven is a great way to chip through. It doesn't chip through, it blasts through. Not Celestial Chastisement, Gifts from Heaven. It does a ridiculous amount of damage, and you can just erase thugs and super combatants with it. Of course, you lose your own units, because it's very imprecise, but it's necessary. Also, it gives us Stellar Cascades, which is, although it's MR negates, it's only for half damage. So Stellar Cascades is a great way to fatigue out thugs, allowing your guys to basically, so they're not going to kill us in return, right? Both of these spells at Evocation 5 is a really good transition in this particular case. More important, I haven't gotten Enchantment 3 yet, which I will obviously get. I guess I decided to queue this up first for some reason. Obviously, Strength of Giants is going to be important in this fight. But that's it. That's how my early game priorities here have shifted. We're no longer worried about a super early game rush, but this is going to be a kind of early game war that I'm trying to fight here. So that is the plan for now. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward to turn, well, shoot turn 29. The battle that I want to show you is on turn 30, but I'll show you the scripting for it on turn 29. So things did not quite go according to plan in the following sense. So it turns out that Pythium was kind of able to crush Falegra, which means that Bandarlog was able to take his stuff back, but he wasn't able to stop me from coming down and taking and conquering him. And you can see everybody's taken a piece. So Atlantis has also taken a piece here of Bandarlog. But essentially, from what this was like 10 months ago. But yeah, Falegra had conquered all of Bandarlog. Then Pythium came in and they fought, and basically Pythium kind of won this battle. Although I don't think Pythium has completely beat Falegra yet. I think he stays alive for a while longer. But Bandarlog couldn't do anything to stop me basically from coming in, and I have done that. There's a lot more going on at this point in the game, you know, elsewhere, but we'll get we'll get to that later. So the reason I bring this up is because remember how I had built my whole army assuming I was going to be fighting giants with crossbows? Well, now I'm fighting Bandarlog, and crossbows are not what you want against Bandarlog. I mean, you know, crossbows are always good, but Bandarlog, you know, he's got his sacreds, and, you know, Bandarlog can choose to rely on all these archers. We don't need crossbows against this. We just need regular archers against this, or our archers with high protection. Instead, we got crossbows, so it's suboptimal to say the least, but, you know, it is what it is. Let's take a look at his sacred. So he's also gone for a Rainbow Bless. His Bless has attack, magic weapons, I guess some precision for some reason, shock resistance, poison resistance, fire resistance, defense, and blood surge. So honestly, quite a similar Bless to mine, a bit heavier on the resistances, less so on a little less killy, but these units are kind of more killy built in because of their continuous 3 attacks. So he's got pretty killy sacreds. Yeah, I mean, here he was just raiding a province, but that was just to show you what kind of Bless he has. And yeah, if I was going to fight Bandarlog, I would not typically bring crossbows. But crossbows is what we got, so that's what we're going to fight with. The reality is this is not going to be close because, as you can see, I've got a fairly large army, and he doesn't, just because he's just basically lost a war. You can see, however, these are troops that I had made anticipating a fight with Falegra. I've got my sacreds, and then I had built as sort of chaff a bunch of these glaives. These are the cheap glaives, and the idea being that, you know, we need high damage stuff to get through the high protection armor. But we don't need to make the fancy guys with heavy armor because they're giants. They're going to one-shot us human troops. They're going to one-shot us human troops anyways. So just go for the cheap stuff. Incidentally, one issue that you can run into if you are fighting thugs or super combatants with sort of human troops is that your troops are all going to swarm around the opponent and basically going to kill themselves on their fire shields. And eventually you might just rout due to an HP rout. So an important strategy, an important thing that you can do is you can take all of this chaff, and most of the chaff just put as on guard commander on all of your mages. This chaff is, so yes, you've brought this chaff because you think it has a chance of killing the enemy, but the enemy can only be hit by, like, you know, 8 squares of guys around him at a time, right? So having a whole swarm of dudes around is not particularly useful. And I mean, it depends what your strategy is for actually killing them. In my case, it's going to be, you know, with mages and communion mages. Maybe my sacreds can chip through or whatever. Crossbows are there to help, of course. But it's going to be with mages. So I actually just want the battle to, I don't want my guys to rout. So what you can do is you can take all these guys, put them on guard commander. That way they'll never get themselves killed. So no matter what happens at the front, even though your guys are melting to the super combatant, he won't just evaporate your entire army, before he gets fatigued, because that's what's going to happen. I'm going to fatigue him out with like Stellar Cascades. But if these guys are always in front getting themselves burned up with like Fire Shield, I'll eventually just have an HP route. So you can put them all on Guard Commander, and then you always have a good percentage of your army's HP that's never really vulnerable, and you'll stay in the fight for longer, and hopefully you can kill them with some good spells. Anyways, that is not the fight that we're having. We're going to storm Bandar Log here. Now, I'm going to storm it, but I know that he's going to come and try to save it. So I do have extra troops, but this is mostly mages that are coming in to reinforce. Also, apparently I got, he assassinated one of my guys here, so I'm sending somebody to pick him up because I don't want these guys to die. I'm sending a guy who can bless. But if we look, this is the army that's going to actually storm the fort. And the only thing that changes if I do a Y, which is to show the people coming in, is you see here we have more mages coming in for a bit more communion support. Now you can see here that a lot of the spells I've got scripted are gifts from heaven. We'll see how that turns out next turn when we actually fight. In terms of what is actually going to storm the castle, it's mostly just the army. This is turn 29 or 10:30, or turn 30, which is kind of the end of the early game by now. We're basically year 2.5, year 3. At this point, it's still kind of large armies that are dominating the fighting, but you need to have mage support by now. If you've only got soldiers, then you're not doing it right. So let's look at what we've got scripted. Basically, we're doing a few. So this guy is just a really expensive Earth 2 mage. I'm giving him Earth Shield because we're storming a fort, so we don't want him to die to a stray arrow. We've got our Prophet, no gear. He's just Communion Master, Divine Blessing. Actually, he could do Divine Blessing first, then Communion Master. I don't know why I had it scripted like that. Power of the Spheres, because I don't know why. We don't really need that. Fanaticism. This is a bit of a weird buff cycle. We should put Divine Blessing, Communion Master, Fanaticism, and then whatever stuff to protect himself so he doesn't get killed by a stray arrow. I mean, Power of the Spheres is useful to have to buff up my Communion, but he doesn't need to do it. Somebody else can do it. And then, see, this guy's doing it, so I don't know why that guy was doing it. The only other major buff we have going up here is Light of the Northern Star, again, to build up my Astral, to make my Communion take less juice if I start to spam Astral spells. If we look at the research that I have, it's not surprising. Like, I don't have that many buffs at this point, right? There isn't much more to cast. So we're doing, we're going to be doing some Strength of Giants, although I don't have that scripted, but it could script that off script. We invested most of our research here in Evocation to get up to Evocation 5. We're kind of working on Alteration, although I've decided to get Construction done before that. So it's not like we have Wooden Warriors or anything like that. And we've got Conjuration 4 to give us Light of the Northern Star, but that's pretty much it. So we're casting the buffs that we need. But they are, they are important buffs, Strength of Giants. And in this fight, we don't really need the mage artillery support, but if we had been fighting giants, it would have been really important. Why don't I go ahead and show you that battle? I guess let me also show you, do we see any other battle? Yeah. I mean, maybe I'll go back and I think I'll do in a separate episode. I'll try to find like other fun battles that I saw during this game. But I can tell you at this point that Mictland is fighting Agartha, and I believe actually there were some pretty hilarious battles here, and so is Marignon. So Marignon and Mictland are teaming up on Agartha, and you can see they're almost on Agartha's doorstep. Over here, there's a war between Man and Cetis, and Man is already on to Cetis's capital. But that was after Cetis had attacked Ulm. And in fact, Ulm is not only being attacked by Cetis, but also by Pangaea as well. However, down here, Pangea and Ys are fighting. So this stuff is really complicated all along here. And meanwhile, I am fighting Bandar Log, and Pythium is fighting Phlegra. So those are all the things that are happening right at this moment. Let me load up, though, the next turn just so you can see the battle, and we'll end on that. So it'll be turn 30. Okay, there was a battle at Bandar Log, so let's view the battle. So, you know, this is not... I'm definitely the favored person to win here. But that's just because he's in a bad position. I'm just way stronger than him at this point because he's spent most of his time trying to fend off giants unsuccessfully. Just in terms of battle tactics, it seems like we ended up... So, you know, Sacred Cav, you often like to put it on hold and attack rear. You can see I've got a hold attack rear blob here up north. He's got a blob down south. Sometimes they line up, and in that case, you know, it's who has the better secrets who wins. In this case, they don't line up. However, I still have Sacred Cav down here, and I put another little blob of Cav down here just in case. So I'm not... My mages in the back here are not really vulnerable to this attack rear. But he is going to get murdered by these guys. So he has, you know, he's doing everything he can. He's cast a ton of Swarm, which is always a good spell. Now it's turn 2, so more Swarm from him. I've got my Divine Blessing coming up. You know, some of my crossbows are hitting, but crossbows only shoot every 2 turns, so it's, you know, mostly not super effective. You know, definitely things are landing, and now Gifts from Heaven. So, so in the opening rounds of combat, Gifts from Heaven is pretty nice because the precision is awful. It's like negative. But no matter where it hits, it's going to hit some kind of opponent, right? Looks like these guys weren't even on hold and attack rear because they're going right towards the middle. So that's too bad for him. And however, at this point, you can see that the subsequent Gifts from Heaven are actually, like, they're landing down here. They're landing right in the middle here, killing some of my sacreds. Yeah, Gifts from Heaven are... See, look at that. Gifts that keep on giving. I mean, I am hitting his guys, but honestly, in this battle, my sacreds are more than enough to do the killing. And the Gifts from Heaven are probably killing just as many as my guys as they are killing his guys. You can see our attack rear dudes are wrecking his mages. Now it looks like my mages have switched to Stellar Cascades, which honestly is a much safer spell. Now, you know, his guys have been completely surrounded, but they're still plugging away at it because they, you know, they don't have terrible defense. Like when they're not completely injured, they also have 23 defense. However, my guys have like, you know, 17, 18, 19 attack. The reason these guys are still standing is because, first of all, my arrow fire is only shooting every 2 turns because it's crossbows. And he summoned a huge pile of chaff with Swarm here. So all of these mages have, all of these red guards have only been fighting bugs for the whole fight. However, you know, my red guards here are just wrecking all his mages. These guys, like, do not care about these longbows. We've got plenty of protection. We've got a shield. Yeah, it is not a big issue. Here's his Pretender. And that's it. Still killing bugs. Swarm is really good, guys. Just in terms of delaying troops, making them do not super useful things. And of course, as they run away, more Gifts from Heaven. Do we kill any more of our own guys? Probably. Yep. I think maybe that one missed one of our guys. Anyways, so we win that fight. We do lose 32 of our 59 sacreds, and at least half of that was my own spells. And that's it. And then we storm the fort, but there's nothing left inside. So we win, and that battle is over. So that's going to be the end of this episode. So, I guess in summary, this was, I didn't have a super early war. I did end up with a late early game war. I did not quite have the perfect units to deal with it. However, I had a huge advantage because the nation I was fighting was quite weakened. From this point on, we're going back into infrastructure. And I can tell you that the next war that we're going to have is against the Mikland. Unfortunately, in this game, I did not... So all the turns for this war until I think like the final battle are on my other computer. I just checked. But I will show you that... I will show you that battle. We'll talk, I think, maybe more theoretically first about sort of mid-game issues and how we're going to plan, how you can plan for that in your build, and how you can prioritize what research you need, how you can tackle the mid-game wars. We'll talk about thugging later, mainly because Tien can't really do thugging. It's one of the big weaknesses. I think we'll deal with that a bit more in the late game. Anyways, that's it for now. See you guys then. Take care.